Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses. Peter
He doesn't even know his own name.
Peter Moses with my co-host, Ardina Seward. John Sharan is missing in action. Nobody at the station seems to know where he is. John, if you're within hearing of my voice, please at least call the station and let us know you're A-OK. Unless you're in Paris fighting the fire at Notre Dame, which you still should call in so we know that you survived. By the way, I don't know about the rest of you in the room. We have our guest today. His name is Peter Antonucci. He is a raconteur, and he wrote a book called Billionaire's Paradise, which, according to Vicky Iovine, how do you pronounce it? Ivan, gee, it might have been close. A best-selling author of The Girlfriend's Guide said the book is smart, sexy, and sophisticated. But before we talk about that, since you are a world traveler, this book is about you going on a cruise ship, a very expensive cruise ship, a top-of-the-line cruise ship, and going around the world for a long period of time. Have you been to Paris?
Well, many times.
And what are your thoughts?
It's tragic.
And Ardina, what are your thoughts?
It's tragic.
I love Paris.
And I have friends who live, I have relatives who live in Paris, and it's just tragic watching Notre Dame burn.
I watched my synagogue go up in flames in 2003, and it was a debilitating thing. And my grandfather was a cantor in Germany. His synagogue was not burned down at Kristallnacht. But Jewish people are used to hearing about and reading about and listening to relatives talk about watching their synagogues burned down to the ground in Europe by the Nazis. But when you see something like this, regardless of your denomination, it's frightening and scary and painful to watch. And so while I like to have a light, bright show, I do want to acknowledge that what's going on in Paris is sad and something we should all think about and not take our houses of worship for granted, because they are important. They're touchstones. And this one's a touchstone for all of Europe, if not the world.
Absolutely right.
Now on to more pleasant subjects. Tell us about why you decided to go see the world and live on a yacht.
Well, I'll do that, but I just want to, and thanks so much for having me on. The book is actually a fictional book. It's not about my travels per se.
Yes, it is.
Of course not. I'm a well-trained litigator. I know not to say that. But
his daughter Nicole is here. Nicole, is this about your father's life?
I plead the fifth.
She's not. Nicole is going to remain silent.
Okay, this fictitious book. You also did live on a yacht.
I do. I still do.
You still do.
Yeah.
And you've seen the world.
I have. I've been to over 100 countries.
Okay. So tell us about this, quote, fiction, end quote, book.
The book is about a group of primarily New Yorkers who are lawyers.
And you grew up where?
I grew up in New York.
Oh, okay. Let's continue along this vein.
The main protagonist in the book, I will tell you, is a female, and even though you've taken your glasses off, you recognize I am not the female. But
no, Nicole.
But she's not old enough to be the lawyer yet. But it's about a group of people. But the main protagonist is a woman, Eva Gabriela Lampedusa from Cartagena, Colombia, and I'm not from there either, who put together a consortium of lawyers and bankers and other people, primarily from the New York area, New York, the Hamptons, Florida, who bought a yacht from a Saudi sheikh and from a shipbuilding company who had to get rid of it. And they decided that they wanted to travel around the world and live on a yacht for most of the time.
And what was the size of the yacht that they bought?
So 600.
How many did it berth?
Two different. I think it was 425 feet. And I think in the first book, there are 36, they're called luxury suites. It's part of a trilogy, and the second book is already written. And then I'm hesitating because I'm already in the third book. So in the first book, I think there were 36 luxury suites occupied.
And the size of your yacht?
Mine, which of course is entirely different, is 656 feet. It's called the World. It's the largest privately owned yacht in the world.
Okay, so this really isn't based on him at all because it's 200 and some odd feet shorter than his yacht.
And a lot less people.
Did you buy it from a Saudi prince?
I did not.
Who'd you buy it from?
Well, I'm an owner. There are 120 or...
Oh, you don't own this by yourself?
Oh, my God, no. I wouldn't be here.
Well, you might.
Well, I might be.
You could have bought it from the Bonanno crime family.
Yeah, well, or Bernie Madoff or
Our
anybody
friend
else.
Murray Richmond,
Very rich.
a very famous attorney, he represented members of the Bonanno crime family and many others, to be honest with you. Well, we have with us today a fiction-writing litigator. You're a litigator, correct?
I am, although retired primarily.
Named Peter Antonucci, who brought his daughter, Nicole, here, who's supposed to be silent, but she laughs at his jokes and laughs at ours, so she's not completely silent. She is, however, not speaking on the record about anything. So you might want to take a look at this book. It's called Billionaire's Paradise. I'm sure you could get it on Amazon.
Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Books A Million or whoever.
And many of the other platforms. We're going to
Correct.
come back after a long Fox News and Business News break. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. Don't go away. You want to hear more about this book about a big yacht.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Here we are on a warmer Monday, ready to do it again. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Ardina Seward, along with Peter Moses. John Sharan is MIA today. However, we have incredible guests. We have Peter Antonucci. I love his name. And he's written a book called Billionaire's Paradise. And he is also a
World traveler.
former litigator. And his daughter Nicole, who is taking the fifth, is here in the studio also.
A lawyer's daughter.
A lawyer's daughter.
So
And
you visited all these different places, all these places that you loved and some that you didn't
we want to
love.
talk about the pirates.
But I'm about to say, so you went into dangerous waters sometimes.
Sure. The Suez, going through the Suez Canal was a trip, but some people relish. I don't care to go back. It's
Should have all worn your Stars of David. And say, "Good, we're all over here. Come here." Where else?
That was the most dangerous, I think, going down the southern part of the canal through the, what's it called, the Bab el Mandab Strait, which is...
The Gulf of Aqaba?
When you look at the map, and you're looking at your screen to see where you are on your GPS, and on one side you've got Djibouti, and the other side you've got Yemen. And this is when the Houthi rebels were very excited and were shooting ships. And the ship that was... I'm going to say in front of us, but what I mean by that is about 20 hours in front of us was sunk, and that was a scary day. That was a scary day.
Must have frightened your canopies to go back in the drawer.
But were you warned by the captain?
Oh, of course. No, we had the ship takes incredible security measures, and
How
frankly,
incredible can they be?
Well,
though? It's a ship.
Well,
It's not a warship.
I'm going to say this because I was on the board of the ship, and there were a lot of things about the ship I'm not going to disclose because of security and privacy. But it's very secure.
It carries an atom bomb.
Well, you're dealing with some skinny little guys.
But you
with
did
rifles,
also run into actual pirates.
We saw there were pirate ships out there. You can't tell who they are until, well, I would say until they're too close. But if you recall Captain Phillips, the little blue boats with the guys in, and the guy with no teeth from Minneapolis who got the Academy Award nominee, you see that, and you need to take precautions to make sure they don't get close enough.
But were you threatened in any way by those pirates?
When you say threatened, you mean did they actually threaten us? I'm going to say the answer is no. Did people feel threatened? Yes, of course.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is did they come in close proximity to the boat, to your boat?
Not close enough.
And they never called on the two-way that they were going to come onto your ship or anything like that.
Not to my knowledge.
And what about unfriendly navies?
It's a private ship, so we're not hostile to anybody. It's generally a lovely seafaring community.
But
out
you're
there.
mostly Americans. And there are countries...
No, it's not mostly Americans.
Okay.
No, the ship is not mostly Americans. It's a very, very diverse international community. I'd say probably greater than 50% non-American.
Okay. At the same time, it's a luxury yacht. And there are countries around the earth that are not always friendly to wealthy
That's right.
people.
There are countries in Asia where they try to jam your radar and do those things to make life a little difficult, not just for streaming Netflix, but also for navigational purposes.
Really?
It's complicated, but I can't. What happens in those countries, whether it's Korea or China, I don't know. I don't know why they do what they do. I don't know who they do it to.
See a lot of whales and other kind of sea wildlife.
Thousands. Penguins, more penguins. I've probably seen, there was one part of, I think, the South Georgia island where they said there were 10,000 pairs of penguins within 2 miles. And it smelled like it. You can never get that smell out of your head.
Nicole's nodding her head, yes.
Yeah.
What about my daughter Caitlin and I took a cruise once through Alaska, and I mean we're both basically city people, and what amazed me were the icebergs.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, whoa, those are some big chunks of ice, Jack. So what did you see icebergs and
again, hundreds if not thousands. I've been to Antarctica 3 or 4 times now. There's what I'll call Antarctica Light, which is where you go from Argentina. But then there's, I'm going to call it the real Antarctica, where you go through the Ross Ice Shelf and you go out of New Zealand. And that's some serious stuff. In fact, we were down there several weeks. In the first 2 weeks, we couldn't get to land. I mean, the ice was that thick and the weather was that inclement. We couldn't get off.
How many helicopters?
First of all, you never get to land. There's no land. You're on ice. But I mean, we couldn't get off the ship.
How many helicopters do you have on board your ship?
None.
Really?
None.
So how do people get on and off it if you have to wait to get to a port?
Yeah.
With an airport. That's how you got around the call.
Yeah.
What happens? What happens if there's a medical emergency?
Well, if there's a medical emergency, of course, there are ways to get people evacuated. There is a helipad on the ship, as there is on most ships beyond a certain size, because you're carrying many hundreds of people. You've got a big crew. You've got a lot of owners, residents. You've got guests. You've got family. Things can happen.
How many people work on a ship of that size?
Well, I'm going to say when you say that size, it's the only one of its kind. So I'm only familiar with that ship, with the World. And it's a crew of several hundred.
Just from a social standpoint, it's a small complement of people on that ship.
Yes.
So, do cliques form? What happens if there are people that you just want to avoid? That you get tired. I don't want to see that guy or that woman. I don't want to sit down and eat with them. So how do you get around that?
It's like any group of people. Most people are very charming and get along well, but I mean, I was in a fraternity in college, and we had 120 brothers or whatever we had. Was I best friends with all of them? No. Did I have dinner with all of them? No. But we had a commonality. There was a bond, and that's the way it is on the ship. Most people get along very well. And of course, I'm not going to say cliques. I'm going to say neighborhoods. There's certain people who like to go on wine tours. There's certain people who like to golf every time we get to a port. I'm one of those. There's certain people who like to go off the ship every possible opportunity, go to meals, and they find restaurants together. There's a population that likes to dive. There's a scuba diving group. I'm missing probably 10 others, but so there's kind of organized neighborhoods, if you will, and socially everybody just gets together every day.
Now, the going back to the book, which I'm halfway through the book, and it is not boring, and I suggest that everybody should run out there and buy the book because it's neat. I mean, it's a glimpse into a world that a lot of us I've never been and probably never will see. But how fictionalized are those people?
Encounters?
Well, that's a good point. Steering back, because in this book there is no ship. There's a concept of a ship. There's a concept of putting people together, of banding together, of raising money, of putting together the notion of buying a ship. There's no actual ship. So if anybody thinks they're going to read about pirates or hijinks on the seas, you're not in this book. The second book is going to be called Billionaire's Paradise: Scandal at Sea. That's a little different. But this is, going back, you have asked me about my experience on the ship. I would say that this book draws mostly from my real life experience in New York. As primarily as a lawyer, there are names and general themes in there that resonate in my head, whether it's from grammar school or from high school or from practicing law or from raising kids or whatever. Just things I've seen, heard, and experienced.
The Hampton set. I mean, you nailed it. Between the Hampton set and the skinny Manhattan women, I mean, that was just, it's on the money. I mean, some of it is sort of written in, and I shall assume, sarcasm, but
absolutely.
But Peter and I, having worked with some of those devotees, I would say that it's pretty accurate. Now, speak to that point, have you gotten flack from your social circle about, I don't want to use the word exposing
Why
people,
not?
but it's let me tell you, a lot of it is so close to the truth that I'm sure that some people have come to you and they said, why did you portray us like that?
Well, I'm sure I will when they all start reading it. There was a certain uproar, without steering it back to the ship, there was a certain outroar or a certain concern on the ship that the book was about the ship, which, as I said, it's not about any ship, let alone that one. And I was on the board at the time, so I thought, okay, I'll resign from the board. My term is kind of almost near the end, so it's not. But my New York friends and compatriots, they're not. Nobody I know is portrayed in this book.
All right, well, that's interesting to know, and kind of sad. You'd like to know the inside baseball with those types of people, because we don't come in contact with them every day. This is Westchester Eye on the radio, and we're going to be going to another break. Now, for those of you who have a pen or pencil and something to write on, the book is by Peter Antonucci, spelled exactly how it sounds, and the book is called Billionaire's Paradise. And from what they're talking about, Ardina, who's halfway through the book, sounds like a good read. You should pick it up, and we'll be back right after this commercial break.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, everybody, to the final quarter hour. Actually, it's the last 9 minutes. John Sharan lives. He actually showed up 51 minutes late.
Oh, my God. Here's John Sharan.
My car works.
John, sit down. Have a seat,
We
John.
thought maybe you were fighting the fires at Notre Dame in Paris, but I guess not, unless you return very quickly.
No, the reality is that my car broke down, and my mechanic literally is right around the corner from here.
So we got a rich guy.
I read all the information that Ardina sent. Thank you, Ardina.
You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. And I'm glad you're here.
And he's
because I know
talking
you'll
about
put
the
some
perils,
insight.
the perils of
Pauline?
the perils of being on a yacht filled with very wealthy people, and the fact you can't get a good pastrami anywhere.
You mean the world?
The world, yes.
The world, yes. See, I did my homework.
Because we are the world.
I did my homework.
Anyway, John, I'm so happy that you have your health.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, for
Nice
the
to
first
meet you.
time in several years, John is here without a hat on.
That's okay. That's okay. The
I
point
don't
is that
remember
he's
the
here.
last time I've seen you hatless.
So let John ask some questions then.
He doesn't know. Okay, John, do you have any questions? Were you listening,
Well, I haven't.
listening to the show?
See, that's what I was going to say. I don't have the benefit of having heard what was already asked.
But what would you ask if this was your turn? John Sharan, ask away.
Oh, and here's
Well, if no one else had asked any other questions, I basically would have asked, when you're dealing with something like the world and its exclusive clientele, what goes into deciding who gets to be a part of this organization and who doesn't? I mean, who gets to be a part of the world? Who gets a chance to buy into having a slot on the world?
Pablo Escobar had a slot for a while.
No kidding.
Yeah. Anyway, Peter, go ahead.
It's a relatively open community. Anybody who expresses an interest in the ship, is my understanding, is free to take a sail, see if they like it.
Well, I
decide if
understand,
they want to.
but I understand from having read it that there's a board of directors. You have to pass muster.
And I was on the board.
Okay.
For several years.
So what does someone have to do to make sure that the board approves you?
The board, there's no board approval process. That's just not. I mean, I've read that too. There are a terrific amount of stories about the world online that are just untrue.
Okay.
So it's comical.
What kind of stories? Without being specific.
I can't. I mean, they're laughable, and I kind
don't
of don't
wanna
even want to
say.
repeat them because they're so untrue. I
Why
mean,
give him legs?
It would be like if I made up stories about anybody in this room.
So what happens though? Jumping onto John's question, since there's no board deciding who gets it, if you have a very difficult person or family or a number of families who joined around the same time who are connected, how do you get rid of them?
Truthfully, it's never happened. We've never had that level of any level of dissidence. We've never had those kind of problems where people aren't getting along and there's a reason to get rid of anybody. It just has never happened. It's a very likable community. People get along very well. Look, you know what you're getting when you go. Very few people will buy an apartment on the world without sailing on it and experiencing it, learning something about it. It's just not what you do. You don't join a country club without ever going there and experiencing it. It's
For very basic things.
I was also going to say that that's a two-way street. You they get to meet you, but you get to meet them. So right. I guess it's what you're telling me is that there's an element of a personality test, but it basically is to see how well you fit within the community. The same way it would be if you went to a cocktail party.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that, except I don't use the word test. I mean, it's a feeling each other out. It's saying exactly. Is it fit for you? Is it fit for me?
Maybe not a test, but a fit.
I'm going to tell you that the overwhelming majority of people who come to see the ship don't buy. Mm-hmm. Because they just, for whatever reason, it's the overwhelming number of people who go do anything. I won't say anything, but many things don't participate.
How often do they update it? How often does the ship get renovated?
It's funny you would say that. It's going into dry dock in a couple of weeks. It's a 5-week dry dock process, and it's every 3 years is the schedule.
Because I saw some bathrooms, and there were Corian counters, and those are kind of out these days.
I don't know.
Look like Corian.
I don't know any Corian. It's all marble. I happen to know a little about this because I'm chairman of the committee that does the capital refurbishment committee. So I know more about this than I could ever want to know.
So when it's in dry dock, do people have to vacate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's pulled out of the water. Everybody's off the ship.
And for how long will it remain in dry dock?
About 5 weeks.
So that's all part of the maintenance schedule. That's all part of the maintenance.
Yeah, it's like if you buy a jet or a fine automobile, you do preventive maintenance, or you just have
it needs service.
Yeah. Just whether it's fixing propellers or changing navigational systems or updating the kitchen or updating your Corian countertops or seat cushions.
I thought that's what I saw
on your sonar to make sure that you can properly navigate the waters.
Yeah.
And then you sit down as a committee and you decide the itinerary for the next.
There is an itinerary committee that sets the general parameters. They sit down with the captains and talk about what the options are. They start with a big, broad slate of options, whatever the number is, 11, 14, whatever. They narrow it down to a smaller number. It goes to the community, get voted on, and then it's voted on. It's a very harmonious process. Very involved. Everybody's involved. Everybody gets to vote and have a say in where the ship goes.
And then, and of course, you have to stay abreast of world events because things change on a dime politically.
Well, of course. I mean, we were lucky enough to go to Cuba. Was it 2 years ago? We couldn't go there today. Whether you talk about countries like Turkey or either of the coasts of Africa. At one point, we wanted to go up the west coast of Africa. We couldn't because of Ebola. Sometimes you've got pirate issues. So you've got to you do have to remain abreast of current events. And you're looking a few years out because you don't decide on Tuesday where you're going on Saturday. You decide years in advance. You've got to make arrangements.
For port fees and all that?
Everything.
The paperwork?
Everything.
Do you have mail to meet you at certain ports?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What about things like...
Amazon's a beautiful thing.
What about Wi-Fi and just staying in touch with family and friends?
Sure. That you Skype, you could do FaceTime, you could do phone calls, whatever you like. Just like being in your apartment or house.
But you don't lose Wi-Fi.
You can. When you go to certain parts of the world. I can lose Wi-Fi in my house if there's a thunderstorm.
That's true. John could never do this, and nor could I, because if we don't
thunderstorms play havoc.
I know, but if we don't have access to baseball scores,
we
have major problems.
Oh yes,
I wish I didn't have
huge
access
withdrawal
to the Yankees over the last 2 weeks. But unfortunately,
well,
my
welcome to the Mets world.
Better than I like it to.
Welcome to the Mets world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, it sounds like an interesting book. That's based on. That's a fictional book
based on nothing.
See, this is what happens when you have a litigator from major law firms coming on to talk about a book that we all know there are real stories and real people.
Because he's a smart litigator. He has to. He's got to protect what he says. He can't.
There's a little bit of element here, a little bit of element there. Not enough of element to be of any one thing in particular.
Do you know what lawyer you remind me of?
Who's that?
John Iannucci.
I don't know who
He's
he
a
is.
very famous New York litigator.
I don't know.
For criminal. John Nicholas, he used to say, John Nicholas fully spelled out Iannucci. They had to make Nicholas as part of the name. Ardina, who do we have next week? And by the way, thank you for coming.
I think that John is
Thank
going
you.
to send us somebody from the auto show.
That's the deal. With
We're
the
gonna
auto
talk-
show press days are this Wednesday and Thursday, and the auto show kicks off on this coming weekend.
So from boats to cars.
So we'll go from boats to cars.
In Norwalk or in Stanford?
New York City, at the Javits Center.
New York. Anyway, you guys should go out and buy Billionaire's Paradise by Peter Antonucci. You
Thanks
guys
so
have
much
a
for
great
having me on.
week, and I hope the Red Sox sweep the Yankees from Tuesday through Thursday. Bye, everybody, and you can hate me all you want. I hate the Yankees. Bye now.